Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Legacy Leaders with Scott McMeans. Today, I'm joined by Alex Sheen. He is the founder and CEO of Because I Said I Would. So, what we're going to talk about today are some challenges that business owners go through. We're going to tell Alex's story. But before we do that, I just want Alex to introduce himself. So, the camera and microphone are turned over to you, sir. Introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Yeah. So Because I Said I Would is a charity, a nonprofit dedicated to the development of resiliency skills and mental health habits to face the adversities of life. And the way that it started is that, my dad inspired me. He was a handshake means something kind of guy. If he said he was going to be there for you, he showed up. He kept his promises. And it turns out today, when it comes to keeping promises, well, it just seems like a lot of people don't do that anymore.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, Because I Said I Would is actually a memorial to my dad. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer. And on September 4th of 2012, my dad passed away in our home in Columbus, Ohio. I was asked by my family to give my father's eulogy, to speak to his greatest characteristic, his greatest quality as a man. And I kept coming back to this thought of resiliency and keeping your promises. And so I created this 1 cent piece of paper. We call it a promise card. You write a promise on the card, you give it to the person you're making that commitment to. You tell them, I'm going to fulfill this promise. And when I do, I earn this card back. It's a symbol of my honor, my respect. It's my property. I'm coming back for it. You fulfill that promise, you earn your card back, and you keep it as a reminder that you're a person of your word. I offer to send 10 of these cards to anybody, anywhere in the world at no cost to anyone, which is the dumbest financial decision I've ever made. To this day, by request only, we have distributed over 15.5 million promise cards to over 178 countries around the world, and by request only. And as it would spread through social media, Reddit, Good Morning America, Today's Show, blah, 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 and my TED Talks, a lot of people think that's what it's about. It's about a card. It's about some guy who likes to talk about promises or something. But what it really is about the development of resiliency skills, because you're never really going to keep that promise to get through that adversity if we don't understand things like stress management, the 4 types of self-control, accountability best practices. These are the tangible skills that help us, get through those challenges in life. So as a charity, we have programs in schools, prisons. We have a 92-acre camp in Central Ohio. But yeah, that's how the charity started, and how I got into this position.
All right, Alex, it's an impressive situation, and I'm sure your father is quite proud looking down on you and seeing what you've done with, I'm assuming his words, because I said I would, is his words, right?
Actually, no, because my dad actually
No.
never said something like "because I said I would," but it was certainly inspired by him in the following way. My dad was kind of like the angry Asian dad. He had very high standards, and worked very hard, expected a lot from us. And so he would say things like, "Because your mom said she would, because you said you would," like, why aren't you
Hmm.
doing this kind of thing? And I think part of his frustration was because he kept his promises. Whether he's having a good day or not, rain or sun, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to want to do it, was a perspective of my father's. So people would break promises constantly in his life, as is true for all of us. And for the life of him, he could just not understand why. And that's really where
Dang.
it came from. So can't name a eulogy because you said you should. I said you should. So I took that positive quality of self control and resilience that my dad had, to honor his word, and came up with the phrase "because I said I would," which obviously is something that people say.
Love that. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
I would like to dive into some of the things you made comment to, because this is really an interesting perspective that I think business owners need to really develop a sense of resiliency. And you made comment about what you guys do is really help people develop those skills. And you kind of went through it really quickly. So I want to make sure people have an understanding. What are the types of skills that you teach, and what are the 4 types? So like go through it a little bit and explain what is it that you do in your program that people could take advantage of? Because I
Yes.
think everyday life, by all means, you need to do this, but I think these are really solid business lessons, especially for somebody who's a brand new entrepreneur, being resilient, right? that's one of the number one priorities or number one characteristics you need to keep going because no matter how tough it is, the highs and lows always seem to work out if you're just resilient. So I want to kind of go through this.
Yeah, when we talk about resiliency skills and mental health habits, we got to make sure that they're as tangible as possible and as reasonable. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter kind of who you are in the United States, as long as you went through public education, um, there's not really going to be a lesson about resiliency and self control that is kind of coded into the academic rubric, right? Meaning
Yeah.
there's no class about self control. Lessons on leadership or stress management are things that we kind of just trip across. Of maybe we went to a leadership conference. Maybe we were fortunate to have a therapist, or but a lot of these things aren't going to reach someone in not only K through 12 education, but college as well, and that includes me. But these are just perspectives that are kind of basic psychology 101 things. So in the case of stress management, like really understanding that you have a stress hormone, right? And in
Mhm.
your blood, it's teeming throughout your system. And how do you get that to lower? Well, if you take deep breaths, and it's called shape breathing. If you breathe deeply, your parasympathetic nervous system activates and it lowers the cortisol, that stress hormone in your blood. And so that's like a quick snapshot of one
Yep.
thought. But like if you are overwhelmed with stress or anger, your part of your goal is just to kind of understand the machine that you're operating, and how do we just kind of lower your blood pressure and that cortisol level. So it could be something like that, or it could be something like the four types of self-control, understanding that self-control is not a monolith, that you have things like the self-control of emotion, self-control of concentration, self-control of impulse, and these different types of self-control. What are the habits and tactics in each one? Self-control, physical movement is the last one, but which ones are you good at? Which ones could you use some work on? How do you pair a strength with a weakness to try to balance that out? There are a lot of different lessons in resiliency that are kind of 101-ish type of things, but if you've never learned them, you just never learned them. And that's why in our programs in schools, in prisons, and our 92-acre camp where we help grieving families and other charities, in all these programs, it's actually kind of teaching the same curriculum. Because if everybody is starting from a place where you just have these random lessons, but no established kind of core, that's where you got to get going.
Yeah, this is really impressive because I think how many times can you go through a stressful situation and not realize you can lower it, not realizing you are in control of this? And I want to make sure I understand the four types of self-control: emotion, concentration, impulse, and physical activity. Is that right?
Yeah, physical movement. Yep.
Okay. Okay. And if I participate in a school or I go to a prison, hopefully I'm never there, but I but or at your 92 acre campground, you do these curriculum to get people understanding how they can be self-controlling or they can control those situations, right? So you have different exercises programs that people go through for those four main focuses. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, our curriculum, the four types of self control is one a workshop. Another one would be like the four types of negative thinking, accountability best
Okay.
practices is another one, goal setting basics. These different types of resiliency skills and mental health habits are a part of a curriculum. So, for example, in high school, our chapter program goes through 9 of these workshops, so one each month
Oh,
for the
wow.
entire school year, and just trying to pick up some of these skills. And then for our families that come to camp who are in bereavement, these grieving adults, they go through 3 days, 2 nights, very similar curriculum. We do partner with Ohio Health Community Grief, and that nonprofit helps with some grief specific programming. So we still focus on some of these core and essential resiliency skills. And then, of course, you need to recognize the specific challenge of loss. And so we not only work with those licensed mental health professionals, we do a candlelight vigil. In fact, tomorrow we start another bereavement camp, and so yeah, it's similar stuff throughout the program.
That's incredible. I appreciate everything that you're doing here. And that what I'm what I'm coming to is regardless of how you think about today's environment and people with their stress levels are at all-time anxiety level highs, right? This is much needed. And I see you as, somebody that's bringing this not to just schools and your campground, prisons, whatever. It's bringing it to the forefront so it's um more comfortable to talk about, and it's something that people can be willing to talk about without the moniker of whatever negativity would be placed on resilient skills and mental health habits. This is a different mindset now, and what I'm thinking about between stress management, leadership, emotional intelligence is kind of what comes out of this, right? How do you teach somebody to tap into their inner self so they can manage themselves within situations so they're not stressed, so they're not full of anxiety, or they can get out of a situation where they're mentally going in the wrong path. And this is impressive. What I'm curious about is when you built this business, when you built this nonprofit, how did it get to be as big as it is with one simple starting point? What is your story?
Honestly, a lot of it's just luck.
Okay.
When it comes to social media, the 170 million views or whatever kind of metric you want to use, hundreds of thousands of supporters, really just came from an origin of Reddit. When my dad passed away, I made a post to Reddit. Um, that was 13 years ago. It got, I don't know, a quarter million views in 4 hours, which now means nothing. But back
Hmm.
then, it was astronomical. And it would lead to people requesting these cards and then their stories being shared. And and that's really what I think, because I said it is the story of average everyday people getting through the adversities that they face. But again, I just always, from behind the scenes, thought that this sort of emotional entertainment wasn't going to make a difference. And I do believe that that kind of played out in certain ways, meaning that there was an interest in, different TV production studios and stuff, like, oh, Alex, you follow these folks around, and there'll be a reality show. Do they keep the promise? Do they break it? And there's a formula here to it. But the truth is, Scott, I mean, how many incredible stories have you scrolled through even this morning that were just, mind blowing in
Mm.
emotion, impact, whatever? I mean, did all your behavior change, later in the afternoon? I don't think that's going to really happen. So we would see stories go viral. I'll give one quick example. This was the first time this had ever happened on social media, but a young man, 22 years old, um, wrote on a promise card. He wrote, "I will take full responsibility for what I've done." And his confession video was the first time anyone had on social media admitted to killing somebody. And so this was 13 years ago. And in this, he was drinking and driving. He got in a crash, was no charges pressed against him. The 62-year-old veteran, Vincent
Oh,
Gazzani, in the other vehicle had passed away. And so when he posts this story, I mean, again, that's sort of like 100+ million views and all these things. One of the most viral videos of that year, because of this strange change in the social media landscape, that people would even say something like this um, out loud on the internet was just new. And I watched all those videos, all the appearances, all the interviews, and they followed the court case and everything. But it was just like that people were watching a TV show. You know what I'm saying?
right.
They're just watching these segments, almost in this kind of eating popcorn type of way. And I realized that in order to actually keep promises to do the right thing, to help your family through adversity, whatever, get through addiction, it's like, it's not going to be a story. A story might get you started, but to really battle self-control each and every day, people like the person who wrote that promise card, that they'll take responsibility, and our supporters who make promises like, I will not kill myself, I will testify in the hearing against my rapist, I will get through these adversities of poverty or the loss of my significant other. Like all these deep commitments require so much more than just an interesting sounding story. So that's why I kind of turned away from the thought of just continuing to pursue uh, exposure or awareness for the charity, and started to say, hey, we need to actually help people get through these
Yeah.
moments, and how are we going to do that? So early on, we just kind of started on that path.
Well, Alex, thank you for sharing as much as you've shared. And I love the idea that personal commitment and responsibility and quote unquote doing the right thing, despite the fact that it's a battle, doing the right thing is the cornerstone of what you're talking about. And what I take out of this, because I'm always trying to look for how does this relate to the common person that is trying to start or run a business? And in my mind, this all comes down to if and when you connect with people on an emotional level, the groundswell for what you do is exponential as far as growth potential. And this is not that you're looking for dollars and cents in revenue. You're not looking at it from that perspective. You are literally looking at what you do in your nonprofit as a way to help people do the right thing. And that is foundationally something that, again, it has exponential potential. I really appreciate what you're doing because I said I would is something bigger than the words that are uttered when you say it. It's the commitment to writing the promise card. It's the commitment to sharing. It's one thing to write it down. It's another thing to share it with somebody else. And now it's in the universe, and now I have to do something about this, right? There's a lot to that. So thank you for doing all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
As
would say
you, yeah,
to
please.
small business owners, one interesting perspective on resiliency through adversity is the impact that volunteerism can have on the volunteer themselves. So what do I mean by that? Like you're going through a difficult time. Mental health is maybe fraying a bit. Obviously, there's lots of different types of approaches to mental health, but the Corporation for National Community Service, did a study on basically just self-reported surveys of volunteers, and they asked questions like, in the 12 months following your volunteer time, how did it affect your mental health? How did it affect your physical health? Things like that, and 96% of people said that it had a positive benefit to their mental health,
Mm,
because when you have a sense of purpose, that
yeah.
you are on the world to balance the challenges for others and help them in their darkest hours. It kind of lifts you up a bit, right? And then also when you have the benefit of context as an individual, as a leader, as someone who's maybe struggling through their own adversity, when you visit someone else who is also going through a struggle and perhaps a much deeper type of challenge, it kind of lightens the weight of what
Hmm.
you're going through. But the truth is, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 75.1% of all Americans don't volunteer a single hour in an entire year. So what I would recommend to small business owners is like, maybe, lifting up a sense of purpose and feelings of gratitude, which can be motivating to, keep living a life where it doesn't feel too as heavy. Uh, you know, Consider taking your employees on a volunteer trip. Not only is
Hmm.
that good for their mental health, it's good for the community and great team building exercise, right? A lot of
Yeah.
these nonprofits know that they're bringing these groups and they're trying to create experiences that there's at least some collaboration and a new type of work that might bring people closer together. So I think there's a lot of even business benefits to volunteering. I'd like it just to be do good for the sake of it, but fortunately, there's more to it.
Well, and I appreciate you saying all that. And one of the things that I would support or make comment to is one of the things that we teach is the sense of vision, purpose, and values. What does your company stand for? What will it not stand for? That allows you to draw people to you, whether they're going to buy from you or they want to work with you as an employee or part of your team. So when you establish that and then you extend it out to the community to show this is who we are as a company, there's a lot more intangibles that become realistic dollars and cents because your business simply performs better when you have this common goal. When you share a perspective, you have a shared understanding and experience that somebody can pull from, whether it's 2 minutes down the road or 2 years down the road, you can always come back to and say, do you remember when we all got together and did this?
Mm.
And it permeates throughout the organization because you all share not just the common goal of, all right, we're going to be the number one business, whatever. You don't want to limit it to just that. But what you share is a sense of participation and contribution to the vision and mission of the organization. And you have a shared sense of values that drew you to the business originally, and now you get to share it with others. And I think that's one of the reasons that this type of podcast, this type of interview brings more value to a business community than simply talking to somebody who's in a for-profit organization that's cranking away and is award winning. This gives people the sense of your business is bigger than just you, and it's part of a community that you can serve in a different capacity. So I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is really cool.
Yeah, a lot of people literally will never volunteer ever if it's not through an organization. Like they have to be kind of led to the water in this way, and not everybody is going to stick with it. But
Right.
to know that as a small business owner, you have the chance to take 10, 12, 20, 50 people and be like, I'm going to introduce this to out of that those folks, most of them aren't going to volunteer ever, or maybe they volunteered once at one place but it just wasn't for them. So they just figured, no volunteering is for me, which honestly
Yeah.
is like a child eating broccoli and being like, well, I don't like food. It's like, that's okay. That's one kind of food. That's one kind of it. There's lots of vegetables. There's lots of fruits. There's not, of
Yeah.
course, you can't just eat one thing and think it's everything. But honestly, that's what happens sometimes in volunteerism. So to know that as the an entrepreneur, you have the capacity to enrich someone's life like that, and it probably won't happen otherwise because no one else can tell them what to do except
Yeah.
you. It's like it's kind of interesting, and so yeah,
Well, I think it takes a unique business owner with a different sense of what he wants to do in the community or she wants to do in the community to allow the team to have that kind of mindset. For instance, I have a client of mine that gives everybody, depending on their tenure, X amount of hours or days for vacation every year,
yeah,
right? But he gives them 16 hours of volunteerism every year.
yeah.
And
Paid time
he doesn't,
off.
pardon me?
Yeah, VTO, volunteer time off.
Yeah, he doesn't qualify it as we're all going to go do something today. What he says is twice a year, I give you full reign to take a day off and go do something for your community. And he's got 12 employees that
Yeah,
throughout the course of the year, some team up, some don't, but they get out twice a year and they serve in a volunteer capacity. I think it's brilliant. Honestly, I
yeah.
never really think much about it, but it's brilliant.
And it's interesting because speaking to different, like the Association of Corporate Social Responsibility, I can't remember these acronyms sometimes, but
Yeah.
speaking keynoting at some of these events, the truth is most of those hours. Now I'm talking about a national scale, as almost an entire industry. Most of those volunteer hours are never used. Like even
Right.
when it's, I'll give the example. One of the best ones I've ever heard was Cisco. I keynoted an event with their folks in Las Vegas, and they at that time gave 80
Wow.
hours of volunteer time off. And that means you could go to like any range of causes. And the truth is, some volunteering is pseudo fun. You could go to a place that helps with equestrian therapy, helping adults and children with disabilities. Well, now you're on a horse farm, right? Or our
Yeah.
camp. We've got a mile of forested trails, a 2-acre vineyard, 30 acres of corn, and 5 hot tubs, a 3-tier cedar sign. Like, it's just like a nice place to be. And to think that you could go on this kind of, also people don't like require you to work every single second of every moment when you're there. Like there is some
There's a
socialization,
little bit of gratitude.
think
Yeah.
about the cause, you take a little break. I think it's good for volunteers to work hard, and that's great. But it's not like full bore. To to know that you get a couple of days off, and and help people and relax even a little. That's not too bad.
Well, and I like the idea of find something that you can do that's bigger than you. And I think that's what the whole sense of volunteerism. And one of the comments you made is about the different vegetables. There's so many different flavors out there.
Yeah,
That's fine. Choose the one you like the best and go volunteer. Choose your
yeah.
taste and go
And
volunteer.
and I think any entrepreneur understands, because I was in the collegiate entrepreneurs organization in college. In high school, I competed in Deco to write business plans for
Yeah.
startups and whatever kind of nerdy stuff like that. And I'm a business major. Any entrepreneur understands that either by interest or necessity, you have to understand accounting, marketing, finance, everything.
Yeah.
And if you truly are just full startup, right? No franchise, you're on your own. You tend to pick up ideas all over the place. You'll just walk into, I don't know, Target or Walmart and be like, oh, my signage could be better like that. Or, you just meet people who are outside of your sector, and there's a way that they do contracts or their CRM, or there's something to learn out there. And when you get to the point of volunteerism, you're inside of an organization and you're helping with operations or what have you. You might be able to pick up something that
Hmm.
is just kind of an idea. So again, I think that's a smaller chance, but I find myself when I volunteer thinking, oh, this guide on how to do this job is actually really clean and easy. Like I'm gonna take a picture of it and like maybe I should do my instructions for my employees, like that, or this email to engage me, set it things in this way. So when you're in the inner workings of any organization, I think that's an opportunity to learn, and that's what volunteerism can be.
Yeah. No, yeah, inspiration is everywhere. And you said find it, pick it up, and do something with it. That makes a big deal. I appreciate that. Um, Can't believe it, but we've been talking for about half an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
I would like to finish up with one question. I'm curious how you would answer this, but I'm going to place you, Alex, in a time machine
Mm-hmm.
and send you back. You get a chance to meet the 18-year-old version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What would that conversation be like or sound like?
Yeah, I don't think I could say anything, and that's because I wouldn't want to disrupt the path that I was accidentally put on. You know, over the course of starting the charity, it would just kind of put me in a weird position where I think about the quote uh, from Spider-Man's uncle a lot, and that's
Hmm.
with great power comes great responsibility. And so as the charity grew, and I'll break the fourth wall. I make about $1 million a year giving speeches, as my speaking fees or whatever, and 100% of that I give to charity. I make as much as a kindergarten teacher. This is not a show to me to help people. So I think that if I were to go back and talk to myself, I would be worried that I would say something that would push me off the path that I'm on. Because I'd love to have a, I don't know, nicer house or like a boat or something, but the truth is, like, the camp's expensive. Helping these people, we work with the Mothers of Murder Columbus Children and other, hospice and other types of groups. Like they're counting on volunteers. They're counting on donors, and
Hmm.
and I know it's conceited or just kind of self-centered or whatever, but they're counting on me. Like I got to pay these bills so that they can come to programs for free, and many of them are in poverty. So there's something about going back in time that worries me that I might, you know, push the wrong button or something like that. So
I
done is
That's
better
a
than
space-time
perfect.
continuum, right?
Yeah,
You're talking
yeah,
about the space-time
yeah,
continuum, and I'll tell you what, this is the most profound answer I've ever had to that question because most people they'll say, keep pushing. It's worth it. Follow your dreams and different variations of the same thing, which is be patient or don't be patient, whatever. They all
yeah,
say something along the lines of just keep going in the
yeah.
in the path that you decided back then and follow your passion. You're saying it in a very different way, Alex. And I want to appreciate what you've just said, which is if I would alter my path in any way, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah,
And
I
I
even
wouldn't be
think
able to
about
help the people.
yeah, I even think about this, which is not a thought I like, but I think it's on paper fair to consider. If I was 18, some part of me would go back and say, you must convince dad at all costs to quit smoking. My dad
Yeah.
started smoking when he was 14 years old. He would develop stage 4 small cell lung cancer because of that habit. He was diagnosed when I was 25, and he died when I was 27. Um, you know, if you look at those years, it's possible he could have been saved if he would have stopped. It's not, maybe not, but even that, which I hate as a thought, is like, would you go, even if you could, forget about just asking to quit, say if you could guarantee save your father, would you?
Mm,
And that's a tough exercise, a mental exercise to go through, because um, for the nature and reach of the charity, um,
mm,
would you trade it? And that's just a horrible thing to say out loud. But um, the other thing I like to do as a leader, though, is to sit in uncomfortable thoughts. Uh,
mm.
Honesty, even internally, is a form of a thought exercise, and so you can have thoughts and not believe them. So I think it's okay to just kind of go through a thought exercise on humanitarianism and the value of life and things like that, and not have to
Hmm.
carry that weight all day, because it's completely fictitious. I need to focus on the life as it
Well,
stands today. But philosophically, it's as long as you can kind of keep that internal emotional balance. I think it's an interesting thought exercise.
I think what's an interesting full circle moment for us in this conversation is we're talking about self-control. We're talking about all the things that that you talked about: stress management, leadership, emotional intelligence, all that. And it started with sitting in an uncomfortable thought. And here we are. After all that, you are in such control of who you are as a person, who you are as an individual, who you are as a leader, that you're comfortable being right now sitting in an uncomfortable thought, knowing I can get through it. And that is
Yeah,
a amazing testimony to the work that you do. I want you to understand. I love the exercise we just went through.
yeah,
That's
and
it's powerful.
it's the truth about lots of things like accountability and leadership. Like when you are the entrepreneur, I don't know, by organizational structure, you're at the top of the chart. You don't actually have to be all that accountable. But that also makes you probably not the greatest person, you know what I'm saying? So like there's moments where you just kind of have to take it on the chin. And that means sometimes just sitting in a mistake that you made, and going through a scenario or a challenge, a thought exercise on what would you do, kind of thing. And I do think that discomfort can, uh, as long as it stays within the guardrails, is a good thing for developing resilience. But Scott, thank you again for sharing the message of our charity with your audience. If anybody's interested in volunteering remotely or at camp, go to becauseIsaidItwould.org. We're also looking for board members, right? And volunteers in that way. But if you don't do any of that, that's fine. Just keep your promises, stay resilient, work on that mental health. That'd be enough for me.
Perfect. All the information to get in contact with you will be in the description down below. So we'll get you connected with people. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Alex, for being a part of this. This was amazing.
Thanks, Scott.
My pleasure.